program. This is your game plan for retirement with Northwestern Ohio's resource for a common sense approach to planning for your financial future with proactive guidance about our money, our investments. He is Chris McIntire, president and founder of McIntire Retirement Services. Chris, always a pleasure to have you here on the program. And this is kind of that last minute weekend. I've read studies that men in particular, 25 to 33% of them, depending on the article that I was looking at, wait until Christmas Eve to start doing their shopping. So this may be one of the chief procrastination holiday weekends of the entire year.
Yeah, and just think how bad it was before Amazon was out there when you could, just be watching a football game and click and ship. So it's probably a lot higher than that. And I'm proud to say I am not part of that category. I'm a planner. We do things, very much ahead of time. So I don't fall into that procrastination on the Christmas present aspect.
Well, unfortunately, many of us also have this same quality of procrastination, Chris, when it comes to our financial planning and planning for our financial future. You are here as a constant reminder to proactive savers and investors not to procrastinate and helping us to identify those beneficial strategies for our financial future, discussing some of the financial and investment and retirement planning options that are available. But let's talk a little bit about the psychology of procrastination and specifically financial procrastination and how damaging that can be to achieving the goals, the hopes, the dreams, the desires that we have for our financial future. And ladies and gentlemen, at the end of this conversation or anytime during it, the real value of the program is that you can make sure that you are not procrastinating on your financial future, that you are taking proactive steps. You can give a call to McIntire Retirement Services, speak with Chris and the team there, and make sure that you are getting ahead of the game and make sure that you are planning strategically for your financial and retirement future. Just pick up the phone and give a call, 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194 to reach Chris McIntire and the team there at McIntire Retirement Services. Chris, there are a lot of areas where we do procrastinate financially. It just seems like there is this psychology that we can take care of it one day or someday, or that we'll be able to handle things in the future. Now is the best time to get a jump on this.
Yeah, no question about it, Peter. I think it's part of the, maybe not necessarily an American cultural thing, but certainly a human characteristic is, if you don't know something, you tend to put off having to deal with it. What do they say? If we spend 98% of our time worrying about something that would only take 2% of our time if we got rid of it or took care of it immediately.
Yeah. And a confused mind takes no action. I've also heard that as well.
Yep.
So I think you're right, Chris. It's just kind of, this is a big topic and we don't know what we don't know. And we sort of get frozen by the fact that we don't have all the information, but that is just a simple fix. That is, give you a call because, Chris, you deal with these complex topics, these financial strategies, the different maneuvers that we can make with our money each and every day to help your clients to improve their financial outlook, their financial future, and achieve their financial goals.
Yeah, and Peter, I get a lot of folks that'll come into the office and say, hey, we got a late start. We're probably not your typical people that you deal with, because they raise their kids. That's very common. It is common to get a late start. That's the way life works out sometimes, and people go through job changes and whatnot. Parents and grandparents worked at the same place for 45 years. That's not always the case, in the, kind of the tailing side of the baby boom generation, if you will, right? Many of them have been downsized as, corporate America changes. And let's be honest, the way America does things here, American corporations, when people they deem to make too much money, they just simply downsize. And that's, a lot of times people in their upper 50s, early 60s that are, really saving good money for retirement, that all of a sudden something bad happens to them and they realize, oh my goodness, we're behind the eight ball. How do we catch up? And sometimes it's difficult to catch up. Sometimes, but you do have to start somewhere. That's probably the analogy that we want to drive home here. And I've had worked with an executive coach, to help me, run a better, more efficient business. And we don't use the word should, right? We should have done this 10 years ago. We should be doing this now. I mean, that's a very bad word. So we say, look, we don't like to should on ourselves. And I'm being very careful how I pronunciate there.
Indeed, indeed. But it is a big change, not just with the individual behavior, but systemically, Chris. It's like a generation ago when we had pensions instead of 401ks, a lot of the retirement planning was sort of taken care of for us and on our behalf. And today, with more 401ks, more personal wealth than we've ever had, but the lack of pensions, now it is much more on our own shoulders that we must be proactive and take those steps to plan carefully for ourselves, for our future.
Yeah, exactly. And, a lot of this comes into play with estate planning. People say, we need to update our wills. We need to, get a trust in place. And then all of a sudden something happens and it's too late for some of these mechanisms to come into play. Long-term care. We should have done this when we were healthy. Of course, I mean, it's cheaper when you do it healthy. And, some of this stuff, you'll forgive me, but it hits up some hot button issues or pet peeves with me is because you tell people and you tell people and you tell people, but you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. And, people say, well, I don't want to spend, $5,000 or $6,000 or whatever it is on, long-term care insurance, but I want to risk $100,000 of my life savings in case I had a stroke. I mean, that's why you hedge some of these risks. So you get these things off the table and, you cannot get insurance when you need it the most, right? When the house catches on fire, you're not going to be able to get insurance for it.
Well, we are going to be talking about some of those specific areas where procrastination can plague even proactive planners and the detriment, and share some stories with you, ladies and gentlemen. But again, don't fall into that trap or that behavioral pattern and routine. Be proactive. Give Chris McIntire a call, 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194. And I do understand that the hustle and bustle of the holidays, this can be a very, very busy time, but what better gift to give to yourself, to your spouse, to your loved ones, to your family than to have that plan in place? And so get a jump on it now. Just start with the phone call, get the ball rolling, because inertia is maybe the biggest hurdle. And if you've got that movement and that momentum, you can take care of things and pick up steam as you go. Chris McIntire standing by, looking forward to speaking with you to help you be more proactive. 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194. And I do think, Chris, procrastination is psychological and it is a learned behavior. It's always that sense that there's always tomorrow, that we can take care of things. But when we begin to get that frame of mind and that psychology, when tomorrow eventually gets here, it's like we think, well, there is still yet another tomorrow. And that's not always the case. And then all of a sudden we turn around and look back at years of delay and say, well, it's too late to do anything about it now, which is also just a psychology and something that we tell ourselves not to have to take action. It's never really too late to get going. I know you deal with people who have generally been proactive, but wherever we're at, we can improve the outlook for the future by taking a first few simple initial steps.
Yeah, correct, Peter. And, I mean, you and I can relate to this very personally here in 2024 or 2023. I'm sorry.
It's right around the corner, Chris. It's here.
Yeah.
I mean, it is here.
Yeah, and we know that tomorrows aren't guaranteed. And, we deal with an older clientele typically as well. And so, the phone rings and life changes. And, the things you did up before that phone call are going to dictate, how life is going to be after that phone call. A lot of times we talk to people about, hey, how much life insurance do you have? Well, we don't have life insurance anymore. We got rid of it. We don't need it. Everything's paid off. And that certainly is a very fair argument. And I'm not saying that's good or bad, but, you and I know Tom Hegna pretty well through being in the industry forever. And Tom Hegna says, look, make sure you ask your clients, how much life insurance do they want on the day they're going to die?
Right. Yeah.
Much as you possibly could have, because it's income tax free.
Everybody's least favorite kind of life insurance is the kind that they pay for and don't use, but everybody's most valuable kind is the kind that eventually does get used. And Chris, I mean, we'd like to think that we're all invincible and Superman, but on a long enough timeline, it's 100% expectancy, right?
No question about it. And it's a great wealth transfer tool. You take pennies and you buy dollars, please reconsider. And obviously there's a lot of other attributes to life insurance, from, the long-term care needs that you can use on the acceleration of benefits that they have with some of the newer type policies. So, many different avenues or, problems can be solved using modern, up-to-date life insurance, as the industry evolves, through competition. That's what's wonderful about the marketplace is, competition between these companies leads to better and more improved products for, the general population, myself included. I have one, two, three, I have 4 life insurance policies on myself,
Yep.
and no children.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think that speaks volumes, ladies and gentlemen. A competent, experienced, qualified professional advisor, walking the walk, talking the talk, doing what he talks about personally for his own situation, and I think that speaks volumes to the merits and the reason and the value. And why this should be considered. Chris, you can't go out and get auto insurance after you have an accident. You can't go out and get homeowners insurance after the house floods or has a fire or what have you. Similarly, we all like to think that we're invincible and we're Superman until we have that instance, and that's, oh my goodness, I need to get life insurance now. And oftentimes that's a bit of a day late, right? We need to be proactive on this and have it well ahead of time. And you mentioned the ancillary additional benefits with the long-term care protection, with the cash value, with the tax-free buildup. There are numerous reasons why to consider, and there are all different types of life insurance for different purposes and reasons. But this is one area where we simply cannot procrastinate. Any responsible, mature adult over the age of 18, especially if you have children or a spouse that depends on income or debts like a mortgage of any type, you should absolutely appropriately, as part of your financial planning, have some kind of life insurance in place. And Chris, another area that you and I know very well the value of and just how often they are overlooked is the legal documents that go along with planning. You and I are not attorneys, but we see over and over and over again the value of having those legal documents and just how often they are forgotten about or overlooked or have not been executed.
Yeah, buddy, you know it. Robin and I, we have our powers of attorney for healthcare and finance. We have our living wills. We have our HIPAA documents. That means if we went into the hospital, who can the hospital give information to? And with us not having children, we need to take that, a step further. What kind of friends and family members do we want to include? And then, we also have a trust. Now, not everybody needs to have a trust. We're not here to tell everybody what they need to do. Again, we're not the attorneys, but we work with a number of attorneys around the area to help people get these documents in place so that, when somebody has a cognitive issue, dementia starting to creep in, you've already got the documents in place that allow you to help make financial decisions. Or, and I'll give you an example, a husband and a wife. Okay. And let's say that the wife ends up getting some dementia. Well, if they don't have a power of attorney, we technically can't talk to the husband about the wife's account because it's an IRA. It's in her name only, Now, I mean, obviously there's some, they come in together and whatnot, but they still need to have those mechanisms in place because if things get bad enough, the husband can't put the wife's signature on a form. And, in today's security world, they scrutinize the signatures that are on forms. And, we really encourage you to update those very important documents that you have ahead of time. In some cases, your children are going to have to go to a judge and get a guardianship to get access to your accounts when you could very easily get a power of attorney in place and avoid all that. Why would you want to subject your kids to that? take care of these things.
The difficulty of the conversation, I think, along with what people perceive as the cost of doing it, are two reasons why we may delay on these things, Chris. But the difficulty that is incurred if we have not had those conversations, if we have not put those documents in place, the cost that is incurred if we have not taken those steps absolutely dwarfs the difficulty and the cost up front. It is a small amount of time and attention and money upfront, or pay a much, much larger degree of difficulty, time, attention, and cost, monetary cost down the road. So just be proactive on this one, ladies and gentlemen. Don't put this one off. Again, I know this is a busy, busy time of year. I know there's so much going on, but just get the process started with a phone call today, and that will get the momentum going. There is no better gift that you could give to your spouse, to your family, to your children, to your loved ones, to avoid fighting, to avoid disagreements, to facilitate the ease, and in fact, in many cases, leverage the amount of wealth and the values that you can leave behind, and giving them peace of mind. Give Chris McIntire a call to start that conversation now. 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194. Chris, I feel like we've spent a good portion of the program here just sort of setting the stage, but we've got other topics that we want to talk about: how procrastination works and impacts us, debt, saving and investing, formulating the plan, taxes, addressing market risk after a market downturn, all areas where people tend to procrastinate until after the fact. Debt is a big one. This time of year, we tend to overspend. The procrastination angle here is that we live in a society where we can get something today, but pay for it eventually. And that's systemic. I think that all of us may have fallen into this, and certainly as a nation, we are plagued by this problem. But debt is a symptom of procrastination. We need to think ahead. We need to be proactive and plan for those expenses that may be coming up.
Yeah, you don't want to say, well, I'll pay for it someday and procrastinate about that. And, we're seeing a lot of credit card debt defaulting right now on the lower end of the economic ladder right now, as interest rates have really affected some of those folks in that part of the population. And and managing and controlling your monthly budget is very important. Not just for the well-heeled, but also for the middle class and and folks on the bottom side of the economic ladder to to spend wisely and know what's coming in, and controlling who doesn't have an urge this time of year to say, well, you know what, I'll make up for it I'll work overtime next year, and there's no guarantee that you're going to have overtime available to you to do some of those things. So, sometimes, a little bit of the pain right now, it's going to save you a lot of the disappointment down the road.
Yeah. Debt is significantly more expensive now than it has been for many, many years. The longer we let it go, the worse of a situation we typically put ourselves in. So be proactive on that one, ladies and gentlemen. Make a plan, formulate that plan, execute that plan to, where possible, however possible, get yourself out of debt or avoid it into the future. And Chris, I talk in high schools throughout the area on the value of saving and investing early. And I show charts to these high school students showing them starting at 20 versus starting at 30. The difference by retirement age is significant. It is astronomical. But no matter where we are in our timeline, in our lifespan, and on our financial progress, now is the time to get started, or even if we have been proactive, to do as much as possible, because retirement is longer than ever. It is in the future, so it's even more expensive than it is today. We need to be mindful, cognizant, and proactive in our saving and investing strategies, something that I know you help your clients with there at McIntire Retirement Services each and every day.
Yeah, and Peter, we deal with a lot of our clients' kids and grandkids now. And, I think in our investing cycle, somebody hears some bad news and they say, well, I'm not going to invest anymore. I think the economy is going to crash. And look at what the market's doing. It's doing anything but that. And that's why you have to, constantly and regularly, put your money in at work for you, for those of you that are still working, and continue to make those contributions. When the market goes down, that's your buying opportunity. You don't want to miss those pieces, or the reinvestment of dividends and things along those lines. That's where, your future growth comes from, not watching the headlines and all of a sudden get spooked and off you go. And I mean, that's just a natural trend that so many investors have these days is, well, I read this or I saw that, and, I think maybe we need to cash out, like,
Yep.
all right, well, when do you cash back in then?
Yep. And we've talked, Chris, about the psychology of procrastination. I think there's another psychology here as we delve into this one in particular. In fact, I've heard on the Dave Ramsey program them very often talking to people who are adamant savers, who are very aggressive savers that have well more than the well-funded emergency account sitting in the bank, but they're not doing the investing. And they congratulate them on being savers, and they tell them they need to get investing, which I agree with. But to me, there's always a part of that conversation that is missed, and that is the psychology of a saver versus the psychology of being an investor. And it seems like savers build up this savings amount. If you've got a large amount in a bank, right? We're talking to you, and Chris, you and I talked last week on the program about the amount of money that is in savings and in bank investment accounts just in this local area in Northwestern Ohio is astounding. But savers tend to be waiting for the right time and the right opportunity. Well, when this happens, I'm going to invest. And that time, it's like having a baby or buying a house or buying a car. There's never a right time or a best time. There's just the time that you need to do it. And investing is psychological. Once we've got the savings in place and the emergency account in place, we need to make investing part of our behavior and our habit and our routine and get those dollars invested when possible, because ups and downs in the market are advantageous when we are just investing as part of our routine habits.
Yeah, without question. And, practicing that regularity as you were addressing is so very vital in this. And, sometimes sticking with the plan doesn't mean your plan can't have some adjustments in it, of course, right? If you were navigating a sailboat and the wind changes directions, you have to be able to, tack a different direction, but you don't abandon, your entire trip typically. You might make some alterations to it. So, formulating your plan is incredible to have, and because that gives you the roadmap on how you're going to get there. And, a good friend of ours, Ron Corser, that, from up in the Grand Rapids, Michigan area, he roots for the dark side, of course. He says, look, he says, if you start off and you're, just about a degree off, by the time you get to your destination, you could miss it by miles. So you do need to come back in and revisit and, look, have the goals and ambitions changed? Do we need to make some adjustments to the plan? Because typically, our destination is here and we can get to it a number of different ways. And what is the best path to get there? And, by, monitoring and making adjustments as needed, but not by reinventing the wheel just because we saw something in the newspaper or they hiked interest rates a couple of times that we've abandoned everything that we've been doing. Dividend stocks, for example, have had a remarkable recovery here since the month of November. You imagine if everybody would have bailed out on them. And, sometimes you have to have some. You can't time the market or find the right opportunity every single day. So day trading is certainly something that, doesn't benefit, almost no one.
Well, I think what you are really talking about, Chris, is having that plan in place, is formulating the plan. We can't just take a shotgun approach and hope things work. We can't just sort of go about it without formulating a plan. And Americans, by and large, we have good, reasonable tools at our discretion and available to us. The 401k, the IRA, just any number of investing opportunities, but bringing those together into a true plan, I think, is the piece that a lot of people have procrastinated on. They say, oh, I've got that covered. Oh, I've got a 401k at work, but they don't take the time to really look at, well, where is that going to lead us? How much do I need to invest? What funds are appropriate? When do I need to rebalance? That is part of the planning process that we need to take a look at all of those tools. I mean, a hammer and a drill are just fine, but in order to build a house, you're going to need to have more than just the tool available. You want to plan for how those and when those tools are going to be appropriate. And similarly, 401k and IRA and investment account are fine. They are fantastic tools, but we need to know how and where each one of those tools is going to come together to build our dream and what we envision for our future financial and retirement.
Yeah, without question there, Peter. And, as we plan into, build this roadmap on how we get from, retiring through retirement and then, obviously, hopefully passing on some assets to children, charities, spouses, so on and so forth, is, how do we make sure we get to keep as much of that money as possible? Because for many folks, the bulk part of their savings is in taxable IRA, taxable 401k, 457 plans, those types of accounts. When they make withdrawals, then they have to pay the man.
Well, and Chris, you segue nicely because I did want to speak on taxes before the end of the program. The entire American system seems to be set up on the premise of procrastinating when it comes to taxes, not just filing our taxes, which if this is the true celebration of procrastination, waiting till Christmas Eve weekend to start doing our shopping, I think doing the taxes may be the second biggest procrastination, but not just filing them. The way that we prepare for taxes, the system of deferring and delaying, a lot of people are coming to the realization that might not be the best way to handle taxes, to continue to procrastinate paying them.
Yeah, and you're exactly right, because most folks say, well, look, I don't want to do any Roth conversions. Why pay taxes on it now? I can delay and delay and delay. And, so, but what if tax rates go up in the future? When would you want to pay taxes? When they're lower or when they're higher? And, so we do a lot of Roth IRA conversions. We probably did more here in 2023 than any time in our career, which means some of our clients are getting the messages here. And, I think 2026, the tax rates are set to go back to where they were in, say, 2015, for example. So the 12% tax bracket we currently have becomes 15. That's a 3% increase in the taxes. And actually, percentage-wise, it's bigger than that. It goes from 12 to 15, which is 3%, but it's basically an 18 to a 20% increase in your taxes in that bracket. Why not take advantage of that before it happens?
Yeah. And Chris, just wrapping things up for many of us, maybe a few too many of us, we are hustling around, stressing and settling for good enough on a holiday weekend. We could have gotten a better gift. We could have saved some money. We could have made somebody a little happier had we been a little more proactive. Now think about that same kind of procrastination in your financial future, ladies and gentlemen. Taxes, looking at things like your legal documents, at life insurance, waiting till after a market downturn to assess your risk exposure. All of these are areas where people procrastinate in planning. And in fact, just bringing the plan together. Chris McIntire is here as your resource to help make sure that you are being proactive and acting with foresight in your planning. And there is no better time to get started or to review and evaluate and to not procrastinate on planning. There's no better gift that you could give to yourself, to your spouse, to your loved ones and family than to have that plan in place. So pick up the phone now, get the ball started, get the momentum going. Don't have that inertia factor. Let's start that conversation or make sure that you are addressing the things that you need to proactively. Chris McIntire is your resource to help you do that. Give a call, 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194. 800-868-1194. Chris, always a pleasure, sir. We appreciate you being here throughout the year. Merry Christmas, happy holidays to you. We always enjoy the time that we get to spend.
Yep, thanks, Peter. Good to be with everybody. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, God bless America.
Tune into Chris McIntire's full radio program and visit McIntireRetirementServices.com for many additional valuable resources, including other great episodes of Game Plan for Retirement with Chris McIntire. Be sure to subscribe.
The content of this radio show is provided for informational purposes only and is not a solicitation or recommendation of any investment strategy. You are encouraged to seek investment, tax, or legal advice from an independent professional advisor. Any investments and/or investment strategies mentioned involve risk, including the possible loss of principal. Advisory services offered through Brookstone Capital Management, a registered investment advisor.
Fiduciary duty extends solely to investment advisory advice and does not extend to other activities such as insurance or broker-dealer services. Advisory clients are charged a quarterly fee for assets under management, while insurance products pay a commission, which may result in a conflict of interest regarding compensation.